everyone, my name is Jiu Kim and I'm the Regional Director for the Boulder, Colorado region of the Back to Bach project. While what we know today as classical music originated in Europe during the Middle Ages and Renaissance, it has since spread around the world. Today, we are really excited to share some emblematic and some more modern Latin American classical music. We'll be playing Aldemaro Romero's Fuga con Pajarillo, Alberto Ginastera's Finale Furioso from his Concerto for Strings, and Miguel de la Guila's Tango Trio for clarinet, bassoon, and piano.
These unique works all incorporate rhythms from Latin American dances and folk music, blending traditional music and the influence of European colonialism to create a unique and culturally rich genre. Some Latin American classical music has Roman Catholic religious influences from Spanish and Portuguese conquistadors, some draws from African folk songs, and some incorporates the traditions, music, and dances of indigenous people. What started out as a blending of cultures after the conquests of the 16th century transformed into a vibrant and internationally renowned classical music scene, producing recognizable composers like the ones we are highlighting today.
The first composer we'll be talking about is Aldemaro Romero. Romero was a prolific composer, pianist, arranger, and orchestral conductor. He was born in 1922 in Valencia, Venezuela, and studied music with his father from a young age. He worked as a pianist in Caracas, traveled to Cuba and New York, and absorbed a wide range of musical styles before establishing the Caracas Philharmonic in 1952. Romero composed pop music, jazz, Latin jazz, and classical music, and pioneered a uniquely Venezuelan onda nueva style. Onda nueva means new wave and incorporates elements of Venezuelan joropo, a lively partner dance, jazz, and bossa nova.
A pajarillo, translated literally as little bird, is a traditional Venezuelan dance. A pajarillo is similar to a waltz, but it places the accent on the second beat. While a waltz would sound like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. A pajarillo sounds like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The Fuga con Pajarillo that we will be playing for you today is a movement of Romero's Suite No. 1 for strings. The pajarillo rhythm gives the piece an improvisatory feeling despite its fugal form. It was with this piece that the famous Venezuelan conductor Gustavo Dudamel won the Gustav Mahler conducting competition in 2004.
The second composer we'll be presenting to you today is Alberto Ginastera. Ginastera was a leading Argentinian composer and is widely considered among the most important 20th century composers in the Americas. From 1945 to 1947, he studied in the United States with renowned American composer Aaron Copland, and among Ginastera's most well-known students was Astor Piazzolla. Ginastera said that he thought of his music in 3 different periods. The first was what he called objective nationalism, and up until 1948 he used Argentinian folk songs and rhythms explicitly in his work. As he gathered experience, Ginastera shifted toward what he would later call subjective nationalism. During this 10-year period, he represented Argentinian folk elements more abstractly and rarely used the extreme rhythmic contrasts seen in his earlier works.
Finally, until his death in 1983, Ginastera would devote himself to his neo-expressionist period, in which he incorporated modernist techniques like microtones, which are pitches that are in between the standard notes of a musical scale. The Argentinian folk influence would stay present, but it would become more of a symbol. In 1966, Ginastera wrote his Concerto for Strings as a commission from the Philadelphia Orchestra for a festival in Caracas, Venezuela. It is an expanded version of his 1958 String Quartet No. 2, and its powerful rhythms tie it closely to Argentinian folk music. In fact, in the Concerto for Strings, Ginastera integrates rhythms used by the Guacho, or the native horsemen of the plains, as a symbol of Argentina.
The concerto's first movement is a meditative rhapsody composed of solos from each instrument. The second movement is frenzied with plenty of harmonics and sol ponticello sections, and the third movement is a melancholic exploration of harmony that abruptly turns into a lost wandering sequence. Today we'll be playing the fourth and last movement of Ginastera's Concerto for Strings. As its name suggests, this final furioso is intense and feverish. The Bartok pizzicatos and fiery spirit of the piece were chosen to represent the Argentino guachos and dancing a malambo, which is a traditional Argentinian folk dance characterized by agile movements and a strong sense of beat. The piece also changes meters often, which means that the pattern of beats is unexpected and intended to defy the expectations of the listener. We hope you enjoy it.
Miguel de la Guia is a Uruguayan and American modern composer. He has been nominated for the Grammys 3 times and has released 64 CDs of his some 140 compositions. De la Guia explains that he strives to create music that expresses his humanity, his times, his geography, and his Latin heritage. He has received numerous awards, including the Kennedy Center Friedheim Award, and his music has been acclaimed as sonically dazzling by the LA Times and many other prominent reviewers.
Premiered at the Chautauqua Music Festival by the New Arts Trio, Del Aguila's Tango Trio is neo-romantic in style and uses Argentinian and Uruguayan tango rhythms. However, although it was written as a homage to tango, the piece does not follow traditional tango form. It is, in Del Aguila's words, an abstraction that contains elements from a broader spectrum of Latin American dances, such as Brazilian samba and Uruguayan milonga.
Unlike most tango music, in which the melody is typically given to strings and bandoneons, the melody of Del Aguila's Tango Trio is played by the clarinet and bassoon. The piano adds a strong and steady rhythmic beat to the music for some parts of the piece, and has fast arpeggios for others. The Tango Trio shifts from asymmetry to more melodic sections and then back, elaborating on the theme that is introduced in the first section.
American music has influenced many genres of American and European music. In the United States, Latin music has influenced jazz, blues, and country music, in addition to classical music. Prominent composers, including Aaron Copland, George Gershwin, and Leonard Bernstein, formed friendships with Latin American composers and toured Latin America, later incorporating the rhythms and sounds of Latin music into their own compositions. We highlighted 3 Latin American composers in this video, but there are many more. Some that we recommend looking up are Manuel Ponce, who incorporated Mexican folk songs into his music, and Carlos Chavez, whose music draws inspirations from pre-European Aztec and indigenous music.